It's winter, and you can now get almost anything you need for the coldest months of the year delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a ski slope delivered, but you can get dish soap delivered. Sunshine, that's a no. But a bottle of wine, that's a yes. A snow angel, sorry, no. But angel hair pasta, Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol and select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to be with you here in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, as Penn State will play USC tonight at the Galen Center at 9 Eastern Time. We'll be on beginning at 8:30 tonight. Now, of course, 9 o'clock Eastern Time means 6 o'clock here. So that 8 or 9 mile trip from here to there at 4 in the afternoon in Los Angeles on a Tuesday may be a bit slow. This half hour brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies and ready-to-drink cocktails, which include High Noon, Crown Royal, Jack Daniels, and the Pickle Bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. And let's see, what's today, the 12th? So 10 days I'm in Minneapolis. Speaking of which, boys and girls, the outstanding Neal Coolong, sir, welcome. I'm actually today further west than you.
The right time of the year to come to Minneapolis, let me tell you. I think it might crack single digits by then.
I'm anxious because right now here it's 57 and they're telling me it's chilly. So
yeah, it's chilly. Chilly's a good word.
Yeah,
sure.
Sure. So Neal, now we get to, for you, what's a really fun time of the year. The Steelers will draft 21. I mean, we can talk about the Super Bowl, but I think it's everybody's been talking about it left and right. The Steelers draft 21, which, again, puts them in that no man's land at the mercy of what others in front of them pick. What kind of precarious position actually is that to pick? And it's not just 21 this round, it's 21 every round.
Yeah, the thing is, I went over my post-Super Bowl analysis was really, how did the Eagles get all of these players? They had a rough year, draft a little bit higher this past year than they usually have, but their drafting is a byproduct of every other move that they make, and those moves are a byproduct of their draft. So it really is, you kind of need the presence of everything, but the Steelers are a good example of being the opposite of that. And we talked about this, the Najee Harris draft. They had a roster that was way worse than the 22nd overall pick.
Right.
And they were in the unenvious situation where they needed to draft starters with their first 3 picks. And he had a good idea what those positions were going to be. So they really didn't have a whole lot of flexibility. They couldn't go out and get what they needed. The Eagles, on the other hand, are a team that's drafting late, but they can draft. I hate the cliche best player available. Mm-hmm. I won't use that, but they can draft players that other teams in the league aren't going to view as 3-down starters, as foundation guys which is what they need to draft in the first round to continue to tread water. The Eagles can get Cooper DeJean, a player that doesn't have a traditional fit with the defense, figure out what his role can be, put him on the field, and invest in him that way. They can go get those players with their first-round draft pick. The Steelers can't. Right. They have to get impact guys immediately. And like what you said, when they're stuck at 21, 22 every year, it's harder to come by, unless you get, let's be fair. We don't know about Troy Fautanu yet. There's a lot to like about him falling to where did they get him last year? 20, whatever it was. Kind of a fluke situation with 6 quarterbacks going in the first 13 picks, 12 picks. Guys are going to fall. I think he was probably the best one who fell a lot further than he should have. We'll see on him. So they kind of get a second rookie in camp this year. But they are, in my opinion, and I don't think that it takes much to defend this, they have the least explosive receiver room in the NFL. That's something they have to address. Probably in the draft and free agency. And while they have Roman Wilson coming in, I don't think Roman Wilson is the explosive kind of playmaker that they need to really worry about, which is one of the biggest problems they had this past season. Lack of playmaking ability at the receiver position, short of George Pickens. And George Pickens was throwing cornerbacks into the back wall through the end zone during Hail Mary plays last year, so who knows what he's going to do. Play. You need somebody solid in there. But drafting at that spot in the draft doesn't open you up to, the close to flawless prospect. It's not giving you a guy that you can count on for huge production immediately in most years. I know where Cam Hayward was drafted. I know where T.J. Watt was drafted. Let's just assume that these Hall of Fame players are not available to them at 21 this year. Right. What are they going to do? They can go in one of 50 different directions. That on the positive side, you throw a dart at the board right now, they're going to hit a position of need. There's going to be a guy there. Right. So I think they can keep an open mind and let the draft kind of come to them, but they need to hit on more than just the first-round pick. Like you said, they're drafting 21 in every round. This needs to be their attitude in every round, and that's after, I think, a pretty aggressive free agency period. They're going to have to kind of, take the governor off here and race a bit against everybody else. They're going to have to spend some money, and all of that really kind of starts with the quarterback position, which, ironically is the one position they just shouldn't address in the first round. Not because they need it, but because there's not going to be anybody there who's worth it. They've gone down that path. That didn't work out so well for them. So it's tough. This is going to have to be another very strong draft for them to continue to build a foundation that hasn't quite taken root yet for a team that is in pretty desperate need on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, they're in that spot, good enough to get to a playoff, not good enough to advance, not high enough to draft to change the team. And this is one of the weaker quarterback drafts in terms of its depth that we've seen in a while. Yeah,
if they're looking, you thought Kenny Pickett was bad. I think there are 2 quarterbacks that will go in the first round. I don't think that there will be many in the scouting departments of both of those teams that are going to be really excited about the guy that they took. And they are, without question, the 2 best quarterback prospects in this draft. If you are feeling lucky and you are okay rolling the dice in the 3rd round, I think there are a lot of guys that we could see 3 or 4 quarterbacks go in the 3rd round. A couple of them probably overdrafted a little bit. That seems, if you want to call this a strength, that seems to be where the strength as far as the quarterback position goes in this draft. It also makes sense. You had 6 that went the first 12 picks last year, and every year we say next year is a great quarterback draft, but there are definitely names in the next one that suggest 3 of the first 4 picks are probably going to be quarterbacks. So I think teams are probably going to avoid that position, addressing that position as far as a starting caliber or starting project goes. But because of that, I feel like the Steelers probably are going to be looking round 2, round 3 for a quarterback that a lot of people aren't going to like very much. So my thing really is I don't know how they could get out of this year without one, for the same reasons that they were set up in the past. They had called Russell Wilson a one-year rental because you only gave him a one-year contract. You only had 1 year of Justin Fields. So you set up this same scenario that they had in 2024 for 2025. And unless they find, if they're going to give Russell Wilson a multi-year deal, which wouldn't surprise me, I would be a bit surprised if they gave a multi-year deal to Justin Fields, but that's a possibility as well. If they don't do those things or don't get those players, they're looking at the same thing again for 2026. Who's the answer? What's that going to be? If they don't address the quarterback position in some way, it's kind of like what I'm confused as what the direction of this team really is. You can't ignore that position that much. At the same time, yeah, you're in a tough spot because it's not a great quarterback draft, but you're going to keep putting this decision off and not truly develop somebody that you bring in. It kind of looks like negligence at this point. You've got to find somebody. And that means at the very least you got to draft one.
Let me throw out a name to you, because Jack Ham and I were talking about the Steelers at quarterback. And this is, again, this just goes to your model of second, third round. Because this is a guy that we saw play in person. And, like, the flaw is going to be like most quarterbacks. When he gets pressure in his face, that's when he gets antsy and doesn't play well. But he does a lot of other things well. A guy named Jackson Dart from Ole Miss.
His name's come up a lot with the Steelers. That makes me nervous.
You know what? Don't get nervous about it. I mean, like I said, he's not going to be perfect. But the guy's got an arm. He's fairly accurate, can throw moving. But when you put pressure in his face, then that's where issues really come.
You know what the funny thing is? I was talking to a scout adjacent person recently about Jackson Dart, and he was one of a few that really would not want Jackson Dart on their team. Right. Not in a literal sense, but almost like a processing sense. What he reminds me of when I watch him play is Derek Carr. And the thing with Derek Carr in college was you saw the arm strength, you saw the athleticism. He's tough. No issues with that. When he was pressured, though, he got a lot worse. And it wasn't, people want to jump immediately to he's shying away from contact or whatever. Carr almost seemed like he wanted to muscle up the pressure. Like the guy's coming at him. My first instinct is not to read down the field. It's to hit the guy who's coming at me. He's aggressive. He wanted that. And what they seem to do is just it's a look thing. I'm not in his head, of course, but it seemed like his processing slowed down far more when he was pressured. Not because he was nervous or scared, but because I know I have to do something now. He would get a little bit more antsy. I can see that with Dart, but the thing that would trouble me with him is Dart's operating out of shotgun most of the time.
Yes.
When he's under center, he's got to take care of his feet before the pressure gets there. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be able to transition where that's a natural movement for him to drop back, then feel the pressure and still deliver the ball down the field? How many reps can he get to fix that kind of an issue? But that said, he's going to be a second-round pick because, like you said, dude's got a cannon. He can throw. You have to like that. It's a question of setting him up in such a way that he can be successful with the current mechanics that he has. That's a lot of things that you got to put around him. You're probably running shorter routes, which is not ideal for the arm talent that he has. You want to be able to expand that, but he's going to have to. That's going to be a 2-a-day footwork thing for 2 years for him. There's a lot that he has to learn with that, and he's going to have to do it without live action, most likely. So, not against it. Wouldn't surprise me. Just I'm hearing enough chatter about him connected with the Steelers. It wouldn't surprise me. But maybe that's just the Steelers are a quarterback-hungry team, and this guy's got NFL starter-level arm talent. I could see that happening.
And the other part, too, is the criticism will be he's a system quarterback. And we've seen guys like that taken in the NFL and system quarterbacks that didn't work out. But now that's where they are. Are there any lessons? Like, this is a copycat league. Are there lessons the Steelers can take on how the Eagles have been built?
Overall, I alluded to this earlier. I think what a team has to really get their arms around is, it's contrary to popular opinion, the game is not won and lost in the draft nearly as much as people want to think that it is. That's one component. It's won and lost in free agency.
Yes.
It's won and lost in undrafted free agency. Yep. It's won and lost in your financial due diligence. There are commonalities in all of these things, but I don't think that there is one golden rule to everything. You have to be good in every area. And I remember saying this about Tampa Bay when they won for that first year. They were huge in free agency. Go get Tom Brady. That makes up for a lot of things. I get it. But they drafted really well. They had great players on their team that did not come from just the draft or just free agency. They hit in all of those areas. And they got high-level players who played within the structure that the coach wanted, which was not just simply, I do things this way and that's it. They adjusted a lot of things. That's what happens to an offense when Tom Brady's in charge of it. They need to be flexible. They need to adjust who they have and what they have strategically to what these guys can do and who they can afford. Put all of those things together. I know that just seems like the most obviously complicated answer, but it's the truth. Within the NFL, you have to succeed in every area. And Howie Roseman is now being praised again. Well, let's keep in mind, this time last year, they're calling for his job.
That's right.
And it wasn't any different after the last time they went to the Super Bowl and won it. And the time before that, they lost, or they won the time before that, lost the last one. Each time, Roseman had something of, it might have looked like they dropped off a little bit. People are saying he's terrible. He doesn't know anything. He rebounded, addressed what the team needed, and counted on a very good head coach and their ability to go find other very good coaches, hint, hint, and bring in guys that can make the guys that they have better than what they are. It's the presence of everything. It's not any one thing. You obviously need to draft well. But the big thing is, like I was saying about drafting in the 20s, you need to get guys that you can get on the field that can play at a good level immediately within what you're trying to do with a very limited selection. So you have to be very targeted and very focused on what you want and what you're going to do with whoever it is that you take. You don't have great opportunities with that, so you've got to make hay out of whatever the opportunity is for you. But you have to hit on quality players in other rounds as well. I don't know exactly what the magic number is, but that's how you keep a team cheap. And I think one of the big things the Eagles have right now, and we saw this on display in the Super Bowl, how many dudes do they have on the field? We talked about Nolan Smith I don't know how many times. We didn't mention Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat was the MVP of that game. I don't care what anybody says. Josh Sweat made the biggest impact on the field. He was a monster. How much are they paying him?
Yeah.
Carter doesn't get paid a whole lot. These are all guys that they've brought in. So you have to draft well. You have to sign affordable free agents who can make a difference on your team. Zach Bond, no one ever heard of Zach Bond before this year. If you're able to do that, and a large part of that is, too, your coaches knowing what a player's skills are and putting them in a position to be successful. The Steelers certainly have a lot of work to do, but that's the golden rule for everybody. You have to be good at everything. I don't mean on the field. I mean off of it. You've got to know you have to have a philosophy that's flexible enough to accept there are only so many players on the market who are available, and we have to make hay with whatever it is that we have available and get the most out of guys all over. And that's you got to be active in every area of roster construction. You have to scout well. You have to evaluate well. You've got to be a shrewd negotiator. You have to know how to be able to be a part of everything. And in my opinion, the Eagles are as good as they are, as consistently as they are right now, because they do that. And the Steelers ignore half the operation and are continuing to try to fit things into the box that they've constructed.
Look, this the NFL is a 12-month deal now. Anytime you cut off one piece to spite your face, you have a big problem. And I feel like the Steelers have been half-hearted in a couple of areas because I've been going by an antiquated model. Is that a fair statement?
I would say at this point there is no way they could defend themselves from that accusation. I'm sure if we were to get an honest assessment from Mike Tomlin, it might be different from, we've changed a lot of things. Not really. This team still operates much in the same way. You have a different offensive coordinator with the run-first priority with a team that can't run. You have a huge capital investment into your offensive line to block the same way strategically as you have done that had not worked with the previous guys that they have, and it doesn't seem to work all that well with the ones you do have. Your mentality on the quarterback position, to put it mildly, hasn't worked. You've had the lesser quarterback in pretty much all of your last 60 games.
Yeah.
To not have an advantage in any of these areas and to continue to face the same problem every single year, you can't tell me with a straight face you've changed valuable components of the entire process. You haven't. If that's how you coach, and they're paying you to coach, then okay, maybe the problem isn't Tomlin. The problem is Art Rooney. If you're not going to make a decision because you don't want to pay out the rest of a contract, or you won't move on from a coordinator because the head coach is handling certain aspects of that, it just seems like there's one centralized problem here that you can't get past. And that's not to say that anybody is a bad coach. It's more the direction here is not working. Look how much Nick Sirianni changed. He's going to get another coordinator. Kellen Moore got hired by the Saints today. He wins the Super Bowl. He loses a coordinator. The Steelers keep their coordinators pretty much after every mediocre season. Maybe there's a reason for that. Vic Fangio is on the open market. I don't think anybody would argue Vic Fangio is one of the best defensive coaches the game has seen in the last 30 years. He was available. He could have been signed. They're not willing to make those moves. So bringing in coaches to continue to do the things that they've been doing, they're going to continue to get the results that they're getting. And I don't see, after the generously calling it a 4-year slide that they've been on instead of 5, we've been talking about the same thing every offseason. It's because they don't change enough of what they're doing, and the changes they make seem like they're too little too late.
Never too little too late with you, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong, brought to you in this half hour by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you and thank you for your years of patronage.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Final half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Yes, indeed. We have a multitude of insurance needs, and guess what? You need somebody to organize them, make sure you're fully insured, and do everything they can to save you money. That's Purdy Insurance. The pros. Great people, great pros at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. We had Matt on today. I thought, look, I'm so thrilled, as I said yesterday, for every Eagles fan. Eagles fans are a loyal lot. And I'm somebody who cherishes loyalty. Having the suit on last week, it made me cherish it even more. I wish I had some. No? Kidding. But the loyalty of an Eagles fan is something to me that when you're any franchise, you cherish. And yeah, will they be critical? They're critical because they care. Will they be out of their minds about something? Yes, because they care. That doesn't mean they're right about it. We all know what fan is short for. Okay. All right. But they're passionate. And Matt, we kid Matt all the time about, we kid Matt all the time about, like, he's off the rails. Well, look, he's like that because guess what? He's passionate about it. And so I'm thrilled for him. I think that's great. James Franklin at his press conference today. And in the press conference, number one, I don't think he got into this because there was no need to. It was pretty cut and dried. And that's Amin Vanover. He had petitioned the NCAA for an additional year because in 1 year he played 5 games and another year he played 7. And everybody knew going in it was a long shot. And in the end, the NCAA did deny that appeal. Okay. Which, again, not surprising. I think worth the shot because they've been handing out. It's been very interesting to see the number of waivers they've handed out over the years. And I kind of wonder if he'd gone after this, and it's all about timing. He couldn't have gone after this 2 years ago. He was already an eligible player. But like if 2 years ago, the way the NCAA was going, I kind of wonder if this had just turned out that he'd finished up 2 years ago and had gone for this. They may have granted it. But they've kind of just a little bit more the ability to say no these days. That's fine. I mean, that's what that's what they decided. So they didn't get into that. He did get into, and there's no need to ask a question about it. It's just a pretty cut and dried thing that was going to be a long shot anyway. He talked about Jim Knowles coming in the process once they got the contact moved fast, but the contract was not signed before the celebration in Columbus. The fact he couldn't go, I'm sorry.
It's petty.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, this is a celebration of the team that won. And there are going to be a lot of people on that team that move on. I mean, Chip, I don't know if Chip was there or not. That I don't know. But Chip Kelly ended up going to the Raiders as a coordinator for $6 million. Okay. All right. There are players that are moving on. There are going to be players going, that had 5 days after that to put their name into the transfer portal. But you're telling them they can't go? I mean, it's about that team at that moment. For example, he probably won't be there, but if I'm the Eagles, I want Kellen Moore there. Right? Now, I don't know if he feels at this point he can take a day, because now he's the new head coach of the Saints. But you want everybody there that's a part of it. And I think what they did was wrong, and I agree with you. I think you came up with the perfect word. And again, the ability to be able to, and I mentioned this when Jim was hired, but it was reiterated in so many words by James today, the ability to identify the person you want and tell your administration that's who you want, and they go, okay, go get him. All right, let's see if you can make it happen. That's invaluable when that happens. That's invaluable. Because now you feel like you've got the freedom to bring in what you perceive to be as the best person for the job. Now, we'll find out how everything works out. Jim's reputation is outstanding. But in the hiring process, you're always trying to bring in the best person that is available for you to hire. The running back coach, he talked about that today with J1. And J1 being there 7 years, did a great job at Penn State, was an excellent recruiter, especially in Florida, right? No question. Now what do you do with the running back spot? So you are at a point where you've got two outstanding running backs, each cleared 1,000 yards this year in Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Right? You do have some up-and-coming running backs. Okay? Martin, Corey Smith, Hayes is now in there in the mix, among others. Cam Wallace, can't forget Cam. All right? So would the idea be to bring in a rising star that in a couple of years really settles in for you? Or do you bring in somebody that's been established but might be on the downside of the career? It's got to be the right fit, right time for what you want, because look, Penn State is in go for it mode. This isn't going to be a case like, hey, he's an up and comer and it's going to take a couple of years. I don't feel like you got a couple of years. Here we go. Let's go. But again, because of the timing of this, there are people that have already committed to working someplace, whether it's the NFL, whether it's college, and something that didn't exist years ago exists now, and that is buyout clauses in assistants' contracts. That wasn't a case a few years ago. But now it's a case across the board, whether it's the NFL or whether it's in college. There are now buyout clauses in there. So that's part of the balancing act of hiring. No question. The other part he brought up was, what do you do with, spring practice, Spring practice is going to be done the way they've done it. Okay, they're not really going to modify too much. They've always been veterans that have, they've played a lot, they've started a lot, and they get involved in the walkthroughs, the jog-throughs, and things like that. But there's no need to put them out there for hitting. Okay? And that was something like, for example, with Tyler Warren. It wasn't until after spring practice where Andy saw Tyler's basketball tape, and he said, whoa, because in spring practice, Tyler did some stuff last year, but he didn't do a ton. Okay? And that's the case with the veterans. Now, what's going to be different is going to be they had to start, they gave them 2 weeks off after the Orange Bowl because they played 16 games. You go. That's a lot of practice, a lot of extra practice all the way through, up through you play the game January 9th. Everybody gets back on the 10th. He gave them 2 weeks off. All right? They needed 2 weeks off. Now you get back into the weight room with Chuck and Alvin and James, and I'm talking James Earls and all those guys. And you're working on it. Okay? And normally they would have 8, some years as many as 10 of those 6 a.m. workouts. But because of the way the schedule is and how late they played into the season, they're going to do 6 this time. They're going to do 6. Now that's in addition to everything else they're doing with the winter program right now. And then they'll have spring practice, and they'll do the usual 15 practices. And the spring games later this year, it's going to be April 26th. There's a couple of reasons behind that. One is Easter weekend is the weekend before, so you don't want to play it then. You don't want to sit there and play it on April the 19th, the day before Easter. So your options were to play it before Easter, like they on that weekend, which would be April 12th, or play it on the 26th. Well, with the game, the Orange Bowl being the 9th, and how late everything went, I talked about the 6 a.m. workouts and the ability to start spring practice later. They can go to the 26th and play it then. Now, the transfer portal already will have started, by the way. I think, when does it start, Todd? April 15th?
I think that's right. It was really weird because there's some of those teams played spring games into May last year, and that was involved, and the portal was involved.
Yeah. This is the timing of this portal piece. I mean, Penn State will be in the thick of it. I think it goes like April 15th to the 29th or something like that. I can hear you in the background typing, so I'm going to guess you're looking it up.
I am.
And there'd still be time afterward. People, and you do expect somebody. Right? And the other element, too, that fits into this, okay, keep this other part in mind, all right, when it comes to the portal this year and the ability to get people when they go into the portal. The scholarship limit or the roster limit, and for the high major programs like Penn State, these will all get offered scholarships in all likelihood, is not going to be 85. The roster limit will be 105. How many of those 105, how many of those 86 to 105 do you want to offer scholarships? Because you have the option to do it.
The spring portal transfer window ends the day before the spring game. It's the 16th through the 25th.
That's it?
Yep.
Wow. Well, I wonder if it's midnight in the 26th.
Yeah.
Game's over. See ya. Jeez. But your ability to go into the portal once the spring is over, so April 26th. So it's what, the 15th to the 26th?
16th to the 26th.
16th to the 26th, 10 days. Okay. All right. Your ability to go into the portal and find somebody is really available because guess what? even if nobody leaves your roster, say you lose nobody, you can still bring in people on scholarship because you have the ability of 86 through 105. I'm not saying they all have to be on scholarship. In all likelihood, they will be. But you have flexibility now because of the roster limit. Now, again, I pointed out I'd like to see this roster limit be 105 with a 15-man practice squad that can be walk-ons. And you can elevate anybody up and down if you need to along the way. But I'm saying, that's what I think it should be. It's not going to be that way, but it's going to be 105. Well, again, you've got some flexibility there of I have openings, and everybody is going to be in the mode of openings. This, again, is part of roster construction. That's why those meetings after the spring are over with, all right, are going to be so important. Now, they can't have the meetings and then go into the portal, okay? But those meetings afterward about, especially with walk-ons, where do you fall in all of this? And those aren't going to be just meetings that happen afterward, okay? These are meetings that have already been happening now anyway. Players are going to know where they stand in all of this. It's really interesting how they're doing this now. Really interesting. One of these days, college football will figure it out. And you're going to have to sit down at some point. There's going to have to be some sort of collective bargaining. I've said it once. I've said it 100 times. It's just I don't know. It's just
it's too much.
Yeah, it's too fly by night right now. There's too much being done organizationally by college football, and I don't mean the individual programs. They're at the mercy of what the rules are. There's too much on the fly right now, seat of your pants stuff, instead of being organized and have the ability to sit there. Okay, this is your roster limit. Okay, these are the rules in the transfer portal. Okay, these are the rules on how much money you can go with. These are the rules on what you can do with NIL. These are the rules. In other words, like an A-B, like a checklist that you can go through where everybody's playing by the same rules. Because that's why when you see sports professionally go with not just roster limits, but they go with salary caps and so forth, and salary floors. There's both. It's to keep the competitive balance in place, because that's part of what makes sports great is competitive balance. Right? The excitement of being able to go out and watch a game. Now, here last night, the big deal was Luka playing. And Luka did play for the first time, and he played pretty well. And Pat Flannery and a bunch of the guys here did go to the game last night because one of the guys in the Nittany Lions club did a lot of work in the NBA, and he has a lot of friends with the Utah Jazz, so the Jazz got him tickets to the game last night behind the bench. So they did see the Luka debut last night here. But that league is regimented with a lot of craziness in it, max contracts and things like that. But that's the way it is. The Eagles, that's why we always talk about that short span as to how you're going to do this. Howie Roseman has to play this game all the time about balancing contracts versus what the cap happens to be. Right? And there's always tough decisions to be made about somebody who might be able to help you another year. But it always goes back to the story I've told before about Bill Walsh with with Randy Cross. And he said, I think you've got 5 more years left in the league, but only 2 really good ones. I only want the 2 really good ones. And, of course, Randy Cross wanted a 5-year contract because he wanted the financial security of it. Well, I think we all want that, right?
I was going to say, I don't think you can blame either side in that one.
Yeah, no. I mean, and now we're going back 30 some odd years, but that's what you have now. Those are the decisions that have to be made. Same thing in college sports. You're going to have to get to that point. There's now going to be money exchanging hands between athletic departments and athletes. There need to be negotiated rules where both sides agree to it, and you're not doing this thing by the seat of your pants, because right now college sports is doing everything by the seat of its pants. And that's just no way to run anything. You and I have tried to point that out in the staff meetings many times to deaf ears. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Well, just for a couple laughs, I'm going to be back in the studio tomorrow.
Can you find your way to your studio?
Well, I'm going to have to find my way to the studio between 6 and 6:30 in the morning, because that's about when we're getting back. Because we're going to go after the game. We're going to go to LAX, and essentially it's a red-eye back. So I think the earliest we can leave here is between 12:30 and 1 in the morning Eastern time, because the game's at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Done at 11 on the game, off the air at 11:30, pack up, go to LAX, go through security, maybe get out at 1 in the morning, maybe get out at 1:30.
So if you fall asleep on air tomorrow, I know why.
Oh, it won't be anything personal.
Nah, it will, but you won't tell me.
Listening to News Radio 10.